people who have filmed weddings, what is the worst thing you've caught on camera and had to remove from the final video? Story 1. Filming the father of the bride speech, he mumbled his way through it. The guest in front of me said, "Well, that was fucking," and only then remembered I was behind him and sheepishly looked round. Story 2. My dad is into photography as a hobby. He has a bunch of expensive cameras and loves shooting in all kinds of settings, so he volunteered to be a photographer at one of his coworkers' weddings. They had an actual professional photographer there as well, but decided to let my dad get in on the action since he takes a good photo. He was snapping random shots all night and took a nice photo of the bride and groom dancing with some other couples. There were tables in the background of the photo, and people eating on said tables. There, in the far back center table, was a man and a woman sitting at one of the tables. In the woman's hand was the man's. I guess she thought she would be able to him off while everyone was distracted with alcohol and dancing. Both of them had straight faces, and you couldn't tell that anything was going on. They were background characters in the shot, so it wasn't noticeable if you weren't looking for it. My dad caught this when he was editing the photos and decided to just darken the background in a way that you couldn't see this dude's junk in his wife/girlfriend/random drunk woman's hand. He didn't delete it because it was a really good photo of the bride and groom and he really wanted to send it to his coworker. He never told the coworker about the whole penis part, and I believe the couple has the photo in their collection of framed wedding pictures. Story 3. My mom filmed weddings for a long time. Once, the groom was so drunk he could barely dance with his new wife. He was stumbling all around, groping his new wife, and even grabbing her butt and thrusting. Super sexual bridegroom dance. The bride was so embarrassed. She was tying to settle him down with no success. This was obviously in front of all the family and guests. My mom made me watch as a lesson in self-control, respect, and humiliation. Story 4. We made the mistake of deciding to set up ours ourselves on a tripod in the rear of the chapel and let it roll. The plan would have been brilliant if not for the fact it got bumped when someone walked past and was instead filming nice solid shot of one of the uncles fighting a particularly stubborn wedgie for far too long. Someone noticed it and adjusted it. Eventually. Edit. Yes, another uncle had to help him in the toilet. He turns up plastered to anything from a christening to Christmas carols. An aunt helped fix the camera. Story 5. The father of the groom was making his speech and got to a touching part about his wife, mother of the groom, who had passed away recently. I was filming from the back, but got his sound okay. But there were a bunch of little kids near me playing quietly until one of them yelled, "God damn it, fuck you!" right as the father was tearing up. Nobody seemed to notice, but it was plain as day on the tape, so I had to do a lot of delicate chopping on that one. Story 6. Sister-in-law was trying to use the wedding photographer as a personal photographer or something to take pictures of her family. She absolutely denied it for 4 months until we watched the video from the videographer that caught her literally saying, "The bride said that she wants you to take pictures of families." So our photographer missed a good 20 minutes of the reception to take pictures of her and her family, and then came to us and was like, "Hey, we didn't discuss this," and tells me what the sister-in-law said. I go to her and she denies it all and says, "Oh, the photographer told us that she wanted to take pictures of the family members, although it was only her and her family, which we weren't on good terms with, they weren't even invited." So months later, we are sitting around watching footage, and just like a scene from The Office, you see and hear with perfect clarity, "Oh, the bride wants you to take pictures of the families, not the reception." We are ready when you are, and the SIL is sitting in the corner of the room and stomps her way to the door and slams it as she leaves. Story 7. Not me, but my buddy was the videographer for a wedding. During the ceremony, they had candles lining the aisle, and the mother of the bride decided to get closer so she could get a better picture. While she was taking pictures, she started walking backwards. Well, she walked backwards right into one of the candle holders and knocked it over right into someone's lap. Commence chaos! Guy jumps up trying to put out the fire that's now in his lap. Guy's wife starts screaming at the women. Took about 20 minutes to get everything calmed down. Marriage went off without a hitch afterwards. Marriage. And yes, it was all caught on camera. The bride insisted it be cut out of the final video, so my buddy put it on a separate tape for us all to laugh at later. Edit. I now understand RIP inbox. For clarification, they did get married. Without a hitch may have been the wrong terminology, but we'll just go with it. I texted my buddy this morning to see if he still has the clip somewhere. This happened about 6 years ago, and he now owns his own production company now, so it's probably long gone. Story 8. It was my wedding, and we didn't have it removed, nor would we have, but the camera didn't pick up the audio. So when you look at the video, you see us making our vows, then the whole wedding party laughing, then it continues. What happened was the ring bearer, a little boy about 3 or 4, during the vows where I'm asked, "Senior, do you take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" And this kid says, not quietly, "You mean he doesn't have to marry her?" Lol, it just blew his mind that a guy would willingly marry a girl. Story 9. This didn't have to be removed, and jokes were actually made about sending it to AFV. A number of years ago in my early 20s, I went to my cousin's wedding. My father asked me to dance, and it was going quite well until he asked to dip me. I said no. I was pretty big at the time and figured he couldn't support my weight and would drop me. He was rather disappointed, and the dance ended soon after. About 3 dances later, I hear him calling my name across the dance floor. I look up, and he is gleefully dancing with my mother and shouts, "Hey, Benther done that 2X! This is how you dip someone!" And promptly dips my mother and drops her straight onto the floor. All proudly caught on video and still referenced at every family wedding to this day. Story 10. I used to videotape weddings for a few years. The funniest thing I ever saw I was during a dollar dance, aka honeymoon dance. A guest went to dance with the bride, gave her a $20 bill, and asked for change. At another wedding, they had little bottles of bubbles instead of rice, so that guests could blow bubbles on the couple as they left the church. One boy, about 10, would take a mouthful of bubbles and blow it out instead of using the little dipper. He made better bubbles than anyone. Story 11. Don't think we took it out of the video, but it was funny. Catholic wedding. Drinking of the wine at communion. There was quite a bit of wine left after everyone went through. Most times I've seen the priest just finish it. For some reason, this guy wants the parishioners to finish it, but everyone is having a hard time figuring out what he wants. He wants everyone to go through again. Nobody gets it. My brother reaches over, takes the chalice, and pounds the remaining wine. Lays it back on the altar. Story 12. I didn't make it, but when we were at my cousin's wedding, my mother fell a total of 3 times. All 3 times my dad, me, or my 2 other siblings weren't around, so we didn't really believe she kept tripping over her dress. That was until the next day when she had a bruise the size of Eurasia on her thigh. We were left scratching our heads like, how? Then the video for the wedding came out, along with bloopers. In the bloopers, you see my mother hopping around with her friend and doing bad Irish dancing when she lands, catches the hem of her dress, skids and falls backwards over said friend before baiting herself off the floor. Through the tears I felt bad, haha. Story 13. I'm not a photographer, but saw the funniest thing get caught on camera during a wedding. We were in Jamaica and a couple was getting married on a crowded resort beach. A large drunk guy wades into the water and goes directly behind the bride and groom like 10 feet back. He keeps trying to get on one of those floating things anchored in the water and falling off again and again. The guests and people around are just watching this guy try to hold his drink, falling all over the place, floating around. It was hilarious and also really embarrassing to watch. Story 14. How about a shout out to my Uncle Gary who filmed my whole wedding with the camera off? The red light means it's recording, right? No Gary, it means it's off. Story 15. Shot 1 with a husbandzilla. They were practicing a choreographed dance to A Whole New World. Disney songs are big right now. He flipped his because it wasn't perfect and said they weren't going to do the dance. She was obviously upset. I awkwardly left the room as it was just the 3 of us and the photographer. They did the dance and it was totally fine. Just seemed like such a stupid thing to flip out about, especially at your new wife on your wedding day. Ran into them at a bar sometime later and they didn't recognize me, but they both seemed happy. Story 16. I've filmed dozens of weddings. I put a wireless mic on the groom in a lot of cases, so I get everything he mutters before, during, and after the ceremony. Most of my cutting was audio related. Lots of guys' buddies telling them they have a chance to run, series and not. My favorite, though, was walking down the aisle after the ceremony. The groom whispers to the bride, "We're getting it on as soon as we leave this church." And the bride gave him this hilarious look, and we're basically jogging out of the church. And everything the guests filmed on the video guest book was delivered, good or bad. Definitely had a drunk aunt go on a 15-minute tirade once, and lots of raunchy stories from drunk friends of the bride and groom, but nothing that stands out as too WTF. Story 17. When my brother got married, I was one of the bridesmaids. It was a super fun wedding, but my sister-in-law, bride, got tanked during the reception. She threw up in the bathroom at one point. During the part where the bride throws the bouquet, we had to get her up there, hand her the flowers, and just tell her to throw. So I'm in the crowd to catch it, and I'm pretty tall for a girl, 5'10". So I'm the tallest there. She drunkenly throws it, and it beelines to my face. Of course, the bouquet was made of succulents. I had cuts under my eye for about a week, and my cousin had the entire thing on camera from a side angle. It looks like a comedy sketch. Also didn't get the bouquet either because I was too preoccupied with getting hit in the face. Story 18. Happened to my parents at their wedding and didn't get removed from the video. When they got out of their limo, some kid on a bike came up to them and yelled, "Get thee out of here. You don't belong here." Kid must have been only 7 or 8, and the wedding was in my mom's hometown. Lol. Story 19. The video from my wife's first wedding, not to me, is pretty funny. They got married in a theater, and the opening of the video is the people filing into the theater and finding their seats. Unknown to the groom and his wedding party backstage, they were mic'd up, and so while the theater is filling up, you can hear the groom talking. This is a fucking disaster. I reserved a Mustang to rent for my wedding pictures, and they sent me a fucking PT Cruiser. Your fucking shoes are all wrong. You have the wrong color of fucking stripe on your pants. And on it goes, laid over the opening scene of the video, totally unedited. Asterisk. For people asking for the story, a version of it is in one of these threads. If you are already tired of reading, my wife and I have been reminiscing about things while this thread rolls along, and it has made her nostalgic, and now we're watching The Office, because the Jim and Pam relationship is close, except we didn't work together. Story 20. My aunt had a camera floating around for anyone to use at her wedding. While my dad was filming, one of the bridesmaids spilled a bottle of red wine on the center table of the room. It knocked a bunch of stuff off the table as well as making the white tablecloth red. Well, my father was facing the wrong way. So when you watch the video, there is a crashing sound. Then my father spins around and says very clearly, "Fucking I missed it," as the bridesmaids is scrambling to stop the chaos. Funniest part of that video by far. Story 21. Obligatory not me, but there is a famous YouTuber who invited another YouTuber to her wedding. This other YouTuber ended up stealing thousands and thousands of dollars from her during the reception. She was going through the cards and collected all of the checks and cash given to her, something to the tune of $30,000. During the father-daughter dance, the videographer actually caught this girl stealing one of the bridesmaids' handmade brooch bouquets. In the background, you can actually see her taking the bouquet and shoving it into a backpack. She actually showed that part of her wedding video YouTube for everyone to see too. I know a lot of people might say this was just staged for drama, but the whole thing went to court, which is public record. Story 22. My dad does them. The fashion for ludicrous choreographed dances was at its height. The bride had forced her reluctant groom to dance classes, dancing to "I've Had the Time of My Life." Their big moment arrived, and the room collapsed into laughter. The first 2 verses were just them facing each other about 6 feet apart, swaying and clicking their fingers. At the sing reaches climax, she was supposed to run and leap into his arms. They didn't get that far. The bride ran off in tears. My dad had to calm her down, then make an announcement to the room that they must let them have their moment. They did the dance again, and no one spoke of it again. Story 23. My great-uncle took over filming at the reception of my parents' wedding, and halfway through it, cuts to inside the kitchen where he's filming and hitting on the waitress getting the cake ready. It's both of my parents' favorite moment of the tape. Story 24. My wedding vows were ruined by a screaming baby next to the video camera. Good thing it was just a friend filming and not something I paid for, but I will never get to enjoy watching my ceremony. Story 25. Used to be a video guy in the 80s and 90s. Shot probably around 500 weddings, I'd guess, so there were lots of things that had to be edited out. Some of the more memorable ones are asterisk the time the brother of the groom stripped completely naked on the dance floor in full view of everyone. Asterisk the time when giving a congratulatory interview on camera, the very drunk bridesmaid started deep-throating the microphone. Asterisk many wardrobe malfunctions. You'd be surprised how often pop out of dresses, especially during the bouquet toss. Asterisk several fistfights/pushing/screaming matches. Asterisk mother of the bride screaming at the best man during his toast. She was furious about something. She wound up walking up to him and spitting in his face. That was fun. Asterisk. The groomsman wrote "I'm fucked" on the bottom of the groom's shoes with a white marker or something. Every time he kneeled down in church, the whole place could see it. Asterisk father of the groom had a heart attack on the dance floor at the reception. Asterisk a woman at the reception sliced her foot wide open on some broken glass. Blood spurting everywhere. Got all over the bride's dress too. Asterisk the table that held the wedding cake collapsed when they were cutting it. Fell all over bride and groom. Bride was hysterical crying. I could go on and on. On my cell, so sorry for formatting. Edit. Tried to clean up the format a bit. Story 26. Like 9 years ago, my cousin gave me a video camera and told me it was my job to record her wedding and reception. Yeah, no thanks. But I did it anyway, even though I didn't want to. Well, during the reception, no one told me the layout of the wedding, when people would be speaking, etc., so I was basing it off another wedding I went to, but, of course, they did things differently for theirs. I was a vegetarian at the time and served dry pasta I couldn't eat, and subsequently got drunk rather fast. Oops. So I ran to pee and came back to find out my other cousin, bride's sister and maid of honor, was about to give her speech. I grabbed the camera and maybe missed like the very beginning. I may not have, I can't quite remember. But my cousin, the bride, later commented how shitty of a job I did. Maybe hire a professional, you cheap. And the reason I think they said I did a shitty job was because I was moving while recording my cousin's maid of honor speech. My cousin is not a great speaker. She has some learning disabilities and was incredibly nervous to speak, but she did it for her sister. And then the groom's friend's family at the table I was standing next to recording started making fun of her during her speech. So yeah, maybe the camera was shaky BC. I was trying to move away from those assholes so you didn't have a recording of people making fun of your sister on your wedding day that were supposed to be there to support you and your husband. I couldn't edit the footage. BC, I don't know how, don't care. So I just gave them the whole thing. I'm not a videographer. If they should have asked anyone in the family, probably should have been my brother. He does that kind of thing. But whatever. I just hope they couldn't hear the groom's friend's family making fun of my cousin in her speech. Story 27. At my own wedding, our friend interviewed all of the wedding party later on in the evening to get some funny stuff for our wedding video. One of my brothers suggested I squirt in the Vagurt, SP, in order to make some nephews or nieces for him. Story 28. Not film, but photo. Had to Photoshop a fully exposed out of the picture. Bride tossed her bouquet over her shoulder while wearing a strapless dress. Right after she came over to look at the pictures on the small camera screen. So we scroll through them, and there's a perfect picture bouquet in the air, looks of joy and anticipation. The screen was way too small to notice the slip. Got back home, processing the pictures, and that picture had pretty much all of her flying out of her dress. Trouble was the best picture of the sequence by far. Spent an entire afternoon getting it back in the dress. Good times. Story 29. One of my relatives' wedding was going along smoothly, no big troubles, food was eaten, and people began to drink. Later on the evening after midnight, I went out to catch a breath. The whole thing was held at a castle-like restaurant hotel, and the bride came along. We had a nice chat and decided to have a selfie in front of said building. I didn't check the picture, supposed it was good enough, and went back inside with her. I went over some small details of the picture, like the guy taking a next to the building, the lovely lady holding her friend's hair while she pukes her soul out, and someone's dead body who passed out on the driveway. The thing that this much beauty could fit into a small little selfie is still amazes me to this day. Edit. I'll try to get the picture. It was like 5 years ago, and a lot happened since that. I'll really try my best to find it. Don't want you guys to miss out on this one. Story 30. My dad used to videotape and photograph weddings when I was a kid, including my cousin's wedding. My cousin and I have an age gap. I was 3 at his wedding. My dad was photographing things, my mom acting as his assistant, and no one was watching me. So naturally, I found my way to the pretty cake, and, very uncharacteristically of me, even as a small child, I walked right up and swiped a fistful of it before it was cut. My mom was frantically trying to cover it up, and when my cousin saw, he was a good sport about it. Didn't really matter in the end anyway. My cousin was a Marine at the time, and one of his superiors was the one to cut the cake. He sliced it in half with a broadsword, so no one cared about my side swipe in the end. Story 31. Not a photographer. But on my wedding video, we were watching it a few weeks post-wedding, and out of nowhere, there's this dude I've never seen before, just standing there, holding up a greeting card with a naked male model on it, full wang exposed. We both were like, WTF is this? When we pressed him, he said the mother of the bride's friend wanted to hold the card up for the camera and kept pestering him about it. The cameraman didn't want any part of it, but my MIL told him to go along. So, yeah. There's full frontal male nudity on my wedding video. Story 32. Another wedding I videoed. The bride was wearing a rather low-cut gown, and the camera caught her father catching a look when she bent down. Probably more like a, holy, my little girl is grown up kind of thing. I hope. He remembered I was there and looked right at the camera. Yeah, cut that shot out. Story 33. Looks like all the comments so far are mostly about photography. I was a photographer at a wedding, and this young girl catches the bouquet. I get Red to take photos of the garter on the bouquet catcher ceremony when her mom comes up and then asks if I can make sure to take the photos from the side. Why? Because she's not wearing any underwear, I was told. To which I wondered, why did she catch the flowers then? Because some random dude ended up all up in her dress without her wearing undies. But people are weird about this whole thing. At one of my weddings, the wife and I had 2 because family was on opposite ends of the country. The guy who caught the garter was cousins W/the girl who caught the flowers. And I was like, why did you catch the garter then? Story 34. My uncle just had a wedding and it was a very nice wedding. Towards the end of the night before they had their final dance, his ex-girlfriend walked into the wedding with her 2-year-old son in her arms, pulled my uncle by the ear, and started slapping the out of him in front of all the guests. She even went to the extent of saying they were still married. He was never married to her. After it was all said and done, his ex-girlfriend got dragged out by my family. All of it was recorded on video. I'm pretty sure the guy who recorded it still has all of this on video, LOL. Story 35. When my brother got married, I was coming back from a cruise for another friend's wedding. During the cruise, I got really bad food poisoning and was sick the last 3 days on the ship. I almost wasn't able to fly across country because I couldn't keep anything in my body. I basically just stopped eating. When I arrived for the wedding, my future sister-in-law comes to me and tells me I'm going to film the ceremony. I was an AV guy in high school and had my own cable access show, so I understood why, but it was not something that was discussed. So I haven't had solid food for 3 days, and I don't have my land legs back, so I'm constantly swaying. The wedding is in a solarium, so it is hot and sticky, but I figure I can make it work. They placed me in the back of the venue, so I can't see who's coming until they're in the room. I'm flying blind and not at the top of my game. I make a few simple mistakes with the camera's zoom, such as a close-ups of a groomsman's junk, followed by an extreme close-up of the mother-in-law to B's cleavage in a very low-cut gown. She later made a still of that and used it on plenty of fish. Things seem to be going okay, but I still don't know what's happening during the procession. Side note. When my brother and I were kids, our parents got divorced. This is not uncommon, but my parents' divorce was really bad. They were thrown in contempt by the court multiple times because of their behavior. They would have to drop us off at third locations due to restraining orders. My college graduation was ruined because they refused to sit together. They have a pattern. So here I am, still sick from the food poisoning, haven't eaten in 3 days, swaying like I'm feeling the Holy Spirit and in a humid solarium. Imagine my reaction when less than 4 feet away from me, my parents pop around the corner, holding hands and smiling, walking towards me. Actually, you don't have to imagine that. On the wedding video, you can hear me say clear as a bell, holy fucking. Then you hear the sounds of guests gasping. Not because of my cursing, but because I literally went pale as a ghost, stiff as a board, and then fell straight backwards and into the middle of the aisle due to a blackout. For the next 3 minutes of the video, my mom blames my dad, and my dad blames my mom. My brother blames his bride, and she blames everybody for being immature. They then had to restart the ceremony and pretend they hadn't seen the bride's dress when she helped tend to me. She's a nurse. And this is why I did not have a videographer for my wedding. Story 36. Not mine, but I went to a wedding held in a public park, and there was a prostitute very clearly soliciting right next to the wedding. More amusing still, one of the guests was a teacher and recognized her as the mother of one of her students. Story 37. Many years ago, my brother and I filmed our father's wedding with his second wife. After the wedding, we decided it would be a good idea to insert a quick scene of our testicles in a margarita glass, thinking they won't watch the video until my brother and I were long gone. We woke up the next morning to our new stepmother screaming, "What the hell is that?" and had to explain ourselves. Not sure if the scene was ever actually removed, we lost our video privileges. Edit. Our testicles were not in the margarita glass at the same time. That would be weird. Story 38. Oh man, I finally have a good answer, and I'm way too late to this thread. Oh well, here goes. I was actually the photographer, and a buddy of mine was doing video, so this is a bit secondhand. We're standing with the groom at the end of a long walkway getting ready to do their first look. We're bantering at this point, talking about our dogs and life and whatnot when we hear a faint but distinct asterisk, moan asterisk. You see, we were standing in the hotel's garden, but there were rooms all around us, a U-shaped hotel basically, and some couple on the left side of the U was having themselves a grand time. Anyway, we chuckle a bit and I ask my buddy, you're not gonna have any of this audio in there, right? And my buddy laughs and says, well, not anymore. Just then, the bride enters the garden from the base of the U. So we're supposed to capture this super romantic moment. Meanwhile, 2 people are going at it like it might be their last opportunity to do so. The woman sounded like she was enjoying herself because each moan got progressively louder. We figured they had to be closer to the tip of the U because the bride didn't seem to notice as she approached. Thankfully, the noise stopped when she made it to the groom, and they had their cute little moment uninterrupted. Fast forward a few months and they are coming into the studio to pick up their video. They watch the quick cut and are very pleased. But then, the bride asks us a question we didn't expect. Hey, did you guys get any audio from that couple having loud? Of course she heard it. How couldn't she? None of us knew she was aware because she played it off perfectly, probably for the sake of the video. My buddy went to his editing station and quickly threw together a version of their first look with the original audio, complete with a ding counter for each audible moan. They watched it, laughed hysterically, and thanked us for keeping it. So while it was removed from the cutesy version of video, the couple was really glad to have it to keep in their personal funny cut. Story 39. Semi-relevant to the question. My dad had an engagement party when I was 11, and most of the footage was actually filmed by me. The reason being my dad gave me the camera at a certain point because his brother's crazy wife had taken charge of it previously and thought it was really funny to zoom in on people's private conversations. He apparently used me as an excuse. "Oh, Rose, Laura just wants to turn on my camera. She'll be disappointed if I don't give her a go." So the footage he ended up getting mostly consists of me going, "OMG, look what the dog is, like, doing now. He's, like, totally cute, OMG." Story 40. I wasn't a videographer, but was a DJ. My partner and I had set up the equipment and done our tests. When the wedding party and guests arrived, we did our final mic checks to make sure everything would be ready for the first dance. When we checked the wireless mic, I noticed there was a lot of static in it, so I asked my partner to walk around the venue while talking into the mic to see if I could get any idea what was going on. I put the microphone into cue and put on a pair of headphones to listen as he walked around. He started by saying, "Test, test, test." Then he would walk by a guy and go, "Testicle, testicle, testicle." Then by a woman and go, "Breast, breast, breast." Pretty soon, he's walking around the banquet hall saying, "Testicle, testicle, breast, testicle, breast, breast." He does this around the entire perimeter of the facility until he gets back to me. When he got back, I told him that there was too much static and we would just need to switch to the wired mic. Once we got things switched over, I decided to work on the wireless a little more, so I turned off the transmitter and just listened to the static from the receiver. After 30 seconds or so, I started to pick out voices and thought to myself, "Oh crap." I started looking around and, sure enough, there's the videographer talking to his partner and their mouths match up with the voices I'm hearing. Turns out his wireless mic was on the same frequency as ours, so my partner possibly caused breast, breast, testicle, testicle to be recorded on this couple's tape of their cherished memories. Story 41. At my own wedding. We got married in a dear friend's front garden I had helped put together as a teenager. Just as we got to the vows, you can hear people sniffling, just about to cry, when the telltale sound of an ice cream van starts to build. It gets louder and louder until it abruptly stops. The driver obviously noticed what they were approaching and shut off the music at what was essentially the property line to the next-door neighbor. Silence as they creeped by the house. Then, as soon as they hit the next house, full blast again. "Do your ears hang low?" Everyone burst out laughing. Should have come back by 10 minutes later. Would have made hella money. Story 42. I wish I could see the video from this one wedding I worked on. My marching band is frequently booked on weddings of alumni and whatnot. For weddings, birthdays, etc. We're generally supposed to be a surprise for the guests. On this particular gig, the wedding was on a beach, and near the end of the ceremony, we were instructed to get set up behind the guests to play, while the bride and groom led everyone to the reception area behind us. As we get our cue to set up, a car drives by. The driver sees us walking up to the wedding, rolls down his window and shouts, "Yeah, go USC!" We signal at him to be quiet and not attract attention to us, so what does he do? He yells, even louder, "Fuck UCLA!" This was pretty much during the couple's vows, so I'm really curious if the videographer found a way to cut the yelling from this spirited passerby. Story 43. I watched the videotape of my parents' wedding a while back, only now noticing that my father said, "Lawfully bedded wife. Come on, Dad, have some class." Story 44. I'm an editor, and my boss likes to interview guests so they can give congratulations, advice, etc. The worst one, and the only one I've ever left out of the final video, said something like, "Christy and Adam, usual congrats here. And don't become a drunk like your father." Story 45. I was a wedding coordinator and once walked in on the groom and the best man having a hardcore make-out sesh while the bride was quietly having her makeup put on. Story 46. Not really something I filmed, but has to do with filming at a wedding. My cousin had this really nice wedding at a secluded venue. Wedding goes great, and they hired my brother-in-law to take pictures. We get to the reception hall for dinner and dancing, and this guy shows up with a video camera dressed semi-professionally. No one pays too much mind to him as he's just videotaping the goings-on. Well, as he's filming stuff, I guess people start to notice he's filming a lot of the kids dancing and stuff. He even focused on me and my nephew who was sitting on my lap. It kind of made me uneasy, so I moved with my nephew to a different spot. I end up leaving early because I have work the next day, but things got a lot worse. People started asking if anyone knew the guy filming. I guess some people figured he worked with the venue as their personal photographer for their website or something. They said he wasn't. I guess at one point he left and some of the guys followed him out to a big van. He opened it and it was full of filming equipment. They confronted him and asked what the deal was. He was very evasive and was trying to get in the van. At one point, one of them grabbed his video camera and it had pictures and film of a bunch of the kids. A family friend of ours was a police officer and she starts talking to him, shows him her badge and asks for his ID. He said he didn't have it and tries getting into the van again. A few of the guys started stopping him and he hit one. He dropped, I guess, and one of the guys socks him right in the jaw, but the guy still got in the van. At this point, everyone is around the van and he's trying to push through the crowd. Someone jumps on the hood and punches the front window, but he falls off. My uncle punched the driver's side window out and tried to grab the guy. I guess finally he pushed through the crowd, and as he was driving off, someone shot at the back of the van with a shotgun they got from their truck. My family got a thing on Facebook up because some people got his picture. It got pretty big, and eventually we got him identified. He was some big shot in a city maybe an hour away. Pretty soon after that, the local police department put out a request to take down the Facebook posts. They claimed that he was a private investigator doing some work for a company. I have no idea if that's true. I really doubt it is. But if it was, why was he taking so many pictures and videos of kids? And why was he an hour away from his home? Just sounds like a rich creepy who asked for his friends to cover for him, to me. Edit because I'm a huge liar. I left the wedding at 8 in the evening and all of this went down at about 2 in the morning. I have no idea why the lady cop didn't tase the guy in the van and then handcuff him and call it into her department. I know that I myself didn't have any service out there, and there wasn't service for about 10 minutes out. Also, the windshield wasn't punched out, the driver's side window was. To be quite honest, this is all stuff I heard the next day from family. I can promise I'm not trying to make this up for the sake of making stuff up.